Thank you, Madam Speaker. We're very happy to support this measure. I think it's incredibly important. Just as a brief comment, I want to say that when it comes to what the members of the government are saying, they seem to have no idea whatsoever what they are talking about, because this is about systemic racism, and it's quite possible in a systemic racism system for people to be very polite and to deny people rights, jobs, and even their basic rights in a way that's completely polite, in a way that's completely acceptable in the workplace, because it's happening right now under this government when they pass laws that strip children of the right to vote for money that was stolen from them, or when they pass laws or they propose laws that make it more likely for Indigenous people to be shot, which is what another element that's going to be on the docket for this government. So the one area that I will disagree with is that I think we do need to talk about the past, because part of the reason Canada and Manitoba struggle with recognizing damaging policies is that the extreme views of the past have not just been forgotten, they've been deliberately erased and they've been buried. As I said, it's quite possible to be very polite and still be passing and enforcing bills and policies that are systemically racist. Now, a century ago, the views expressed by prominent figures that people looked up to today were shocking. And because they proved embarrassing after the fact, they've been glossed over. So there were members of the famous five. We have a statue on the lawn. They endorsed eugenics. The writings of J.S. Wordsworth about Indigenous people and Black Canadians are appalling. And there are still devastating impacts about these attitudes today. Many Canadians are unaware that the Ku Klux Klan once had a strong presence in Western Canada, and that Alberta and BC had sterilization laws on the books until the 1970s. Thousands of people, women and men, were sterilized without their consent. And it happened because politicians strongly believed in race-based eugenics, permanently sterilizing people, especially marginalized people, to keep them from having children. Now, there are cases of Indigenous women being sterilized in Saskatchewan and Manitoba in the last 20 years. The Ku Klux Klan had a presence in Canada a century ago, and they attacked people not just because of the different skin color. They launched terrorist attacks, especially on Catholics. A church in Quebec City was burned. A stick of dynamite blew a hole in a church in Barrie, Ontario. And in 1922, after getting threatening letters from the KKK, St. Boniface College was burned and 10 students died. In the late 1920s, the KKK in Saskatchewan had 25,000 members, with chapters in every major city. They recruited politicians and Protestant ministers. And in 1928, a man named Daniel Carlisle Grant moved from Saskatchewan to Manitoba to recruit for the KKK. He was called a capable organizer with the instincts of a shark. He set up in Brandon, he came to Winnipeg, and he delivered racist, anti-Catholic, and anti-Semitic speeches peppered with racist slurs. But when he said he was going to go to St. Boniface, the priest in charge of the St. Boniface Cathedral, Monsignor Wilfred Jubenville, accused Grant of being a coward and warned him to stay out of St. B. The St. Boniface chief of police said drastic police action would be taken against the Klan. The mayor of Winnipeg, Daniel McLean, a businessman and a veteran, said Grant should be ignored. He set up some chapters and he went back to Saskatchewan, where he went to work for J.J. Maloney, the head of the KKK there, for the 1929 election. The imperial wizard of the KKK in Saskatchewan attended the Conservative Party convention, and on the May-long weekend, crosses were burned in 160...
Order, please. Order, please. I'm just going to ask the member, he strayed quite a long distance away from the bill that is before us, and I would ask the member to bring his remarks back to the bill that is before us, and I'm sure he's getting to that point, so I would just encourage him to get specifically to talking about this bill that is before the House, which is about mandatory training for civil servants.
This is about mandatory training for civil servants.
The Honourable,
Madam Speaker.
The Honourable Member for St. Boniface.
So with the support of the KKK, the Conservatives campaigned to defeat the Liberal government of James Gardner, which was pro-immigration, pro-Catholic, and anti-Klan. And the future Prime Minister, John Diefenbaker, was a Conservative candidate in that election. The KKK had Conservative mayors, MLAs, and at least one MP. And Duncan C. Grant got a job running the employment office in Weyburn, Saskatchewan. And that's the political environment in Saskatchewan that Tommy Douglas found himself moving into in 1930, also to Weyburn. And this puts Douglas's master's thesis about eugenics in a different light. In the book.
Order, please. I'm not sure if the member's aware of what the legislation is before the House this morning. And I don't want people to be laughing because this is serious. It's a serious bill, but the bill is speaking to asking for mandatory training, and that is where I would ask the member for St. Boniface to get to that point in his debate. The Honourable Member for St. Boniface.
I will say, Madam Speaker, that this is the sort of content that needs to be included in training. The fact that in 1935, when Tommy Douglas was running against a Liberal, and one of the key people on his campaign was that Ku Klux Klan organizer, Duncan C. Grant, who'd been fired from his government job because Liberals don't want Klansmen in their government. This is the same Duncan C. Grant who spread hate across Manitoba and Saskatchewan, and he was one of Douglas's closest advisors. He coached Douglas on speaking, he raised money for the campaign, and he got Bible Bill Aberhart, the Social Credit Premier of Alberta, to endorse Douglas. And when the CCF grassroots objected, MJ Coldwell, the future CCF leader, ignored them. And I'm sure this is a surprise to many, but the fact is, this is the history that we have to deal with, and it has been swept under the rug for decades. There was also an effort to bring eugenics to Manitoba in 1940. The leader of the Conservative Party, an MLA from Portage la Prairie, said that sterilization was required to reduce the number of people with disabilities and to save money. And there was an MLA there who did not need to travel to Nazi Germany in 1936, as Tommy Douglas did, to know that sterilizing people is wrong. It was the Liberal MLA for Iberville. He was a Protestant lawyer. He was a World War I veteran, and he told the Conservative leader, we can get along without sterilization without sterilization for hundreds of thousands of years, and we can get along with it for a while longer. The element of individual freedom still counts for something. He said, an idiot may be born in a royal palace and a Lincoln in a log cabin. We can't generalize. And that MLA was my grandfather, John S. Lamont. We need to recognize that every human being is more than the group they belong to. They're more than the status they've been assigned as society. As an individual, unique and worthy of dignity and rights. And when they speak up, they have to be heard. And we need to be prepared to deliver justice in their behalf. And that is something that the members of this legislature have too often refused to do. So I'm more than happy to endorse this. We have to confront these biases, but we cannot shy away from the truth and the history of the parties in this chamber, Madam Speaker. Thank you.